Good morning, traders and investors. Thank you for tuning in today on this Friday, March 14th, 2025. Bit of a quiet Friday here heading into the weekend. Stocks potentially finding some near-term support, but will they hold over today? We had a good show for you today ahead of next week's Fed decision on Wednesday. Christian, maybe seeing some fear in the markets creeping in a little bit yesterday. Looking at its equity put call ratio, we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Gold, new recent highs. That's concerning a little bit here. Dennis has a little theme he wants to go over. Up all night, down all day. We got some favorable reaction here related to the House funding bill. A couple earnings that we're going to look at here today. And just a heads up, at 10 a.m. Eastern time, Michigan consumer sentiment will be coming down the pipeline. I guess for today at 8:35, Tony Pawlak, he is owner of Real Life Trading. Always some good positive commentary, reassuring commentary coming out of Tony. That's going to be important here today on Pre-Market Prep.
The volatility right now is really incredible.
Wow, look at that consolidation on the upper right chart.
You know what we've seen this earnings season? Some of these expected moves get even more violent. This is why I have switched my strategy 10 years ago. And if you're chasing, you're in trouble.
Christian Fromhertz, good morning, sir. How's your morning going so far?
Good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Let's do a quick rundown of where the markets are. I'm going to start with international markets. We got a really nice move in some of these markets this morning, especially China. Hang Seng up 2.1% last night. Watch for those ADRs to be up decently this morning. You also had the Shanghai, which actually outperformed the Hang Seng last night, up 2.4%. So Asian markets, some nice moves. And then you also have European markets up nicely. European stocks, Euro Stocks 50 up 1.3%. Also, the DAX is getting a nice lift this morning, up 1.7%. Let's go over to commodities. I've got a crude chart in front of you. Crude is up slightly, up 0.3 of a percentage point. Let's go over to nat gas futures. They are essentially flat. They've been moving down a little bit this week after seemed like a very heavy candle to the upside earlier this week. Copper futures, let's talk about copper, which is breaking higher here. Really strong this week. Also pretty good, I think, for emerging markets. Usually when copper goes up, that means emerging markets are pretty strong, and you got a nice break higher there in copper futures. How about this this little metal that everybody's talking about this morning? We'll bring up gold. I'll just bring up GLD. We talked about the possibility of a break higher yesterday. You got it. And a lot of people talking about this new level in gold futures, which is above, what is it, 3,000. I think gold futures are trading 3,006. Also silver, and I'll bring up futures here for silver, but you can kind of see what's going on here. Also pretty strong here too, and you got a breakout of recent highs in silver. Let's go over to bonds. We had 3 bond auctions this week. No more bond auctions. Whoops, let's bring up 30-year bond futures here. They're a little bit soft, so rates are moving a little bit higher. Bond futures are down about 0.4 of a percentage point. I have not been including Bitcoin, but I'll do it this morning in the rundown. Bitcoin futures are up 3, getting a bit of a bounce this morning, kind of trying to carve out a low here right on the 200-day moving average. Bitcoin futures up 3.7%. And then finally, how could I leave the equity futures in the U.S. here for last? S&P futures up 0.7 of a percentage point, still below the 5-period moving average, something that I'll be watching closely over today as well as the beginning of next week. Also, NASDAQ futures, they're outperforming this morning, up 1%. Same thing, still below that 5-day moving average, but that's also, again, something that I'm really watching for today. And then finally, Russell futures, which are up 0.8 of a percentage point. Same thing, still below that 5-day moving average. Can they get above the 5-period moving average? Where's Mr. Dennis? There he is.
Hi, I'm here. What's going on?
Dennis, how we doing?
We're doing okay. Always challenges in this household, but we go on. We're moving. Winter's going to end here eventually, the worst winter in my life. So hopefully the stock market turns around too. It's not only been a winter in reality, it's also been a winter in the long-term portfolio of most people. So Nice bounce this morning. What I just wanted to say is the theme continues, which we've been talking about forever on this show, is long all night sell. So basically, buy the close, sell the open, continues to work. Again, we get a huge overnight lift after closing very weak. Hard to just get all excited, but there was some reasons to get excited here, Christian. Around 5:30, we had multiple headlines, macro. Looks like they're going to get enough votes to pass the funding bill. So that's one piece of good news. Second piece of good news is Doug Ford came out around 5:30 last night. Ontario Premier obviously said very constructive talks with the White House. So markets popped up when the futures reopened at 6 o'clock on all of that news, and we've continued to build on that.
Dennis, I wanted to ask Doug Ford, I mean the Ontario Premier, he's running the show in Canada effectively.
Oh, he's running the show in Ontario. It's going to be Carney that's going to be running the show in Canada now. Trudeau is officially out now. It is Carney until we get an election probably later in the summer. They don't have the date here yet.
So why is it favorable if we're getting the Ontario Premier with favorable commentary?
Well, because Ontario's, been doing their own tariffs and stuff too. So you have it on, but Ontario's threatening electricity cutoffs, the electricity. Doug Ford's been playing tough guy, and he's softened up here a little bit. We know you can't play tough guy with Donald Trump. He will play tough guy harder. So I think somebody's advised him because he was playing tough guy off the bat, pulling all the liquor, remember, off of the store shelf, doing all. That was all on a provincial level. There was other provinces doing it too, but a lot of that was Ontario doing a lot of that stuff. I think somebody's advised Dougie that, I'll call you Dougie, Doug Ford, that it's not advisable to play tough guy with Trump. So the softened stance, that we heard at 5:30, very productive talks, good talks. We're going to get somewhere here. That, makes the market positive as well because, even though obviously this has been a growth tech sell-off, this tariff war was the catalyst that started it all, and it's probably going to need to, cool off or end for this market to really grab footing and start to rally.
Let's keep it rolling here. And Christian, you had a cool little topic that I wanted to start the show off with. You saw a little bit of fear creeping into the market yesterday. You've been watching the equity put call ratio. This is like one of your favorite metrics to watch, right?
Yeah, it's so I tend to look when we have a market sell off. Let me see if I can stop screen and then see if I could share screen again. Sorry, just bear with me. Present, share screen, window. Yeah, so when we're going through a market dip where now the headlines are market correction because it's officially, I guess, 10%. But I begin to look for things that start to show like when we've been pretty washed out to the downside and when there's fear that's kind of in the market. I don't like when we're going down as we have been over the last couple of weeks. And there really hasn't, in terms of some of the things that I pay attention to, that I haven't noticed that we've seen, or I haven't observed that there's been a lot of like fear in some of the things like the equity put call ratio. So this isn't like the one thing that I watch, but again, I look at a series of factors. And I've just been noticing like over the last couple of weeks, I'm like, hey, there's really there hasn't been any real fear in this market, evidenced by a lot more puts being traded than calls. So finally yesterday something changed. What I've got here is this these lines that you see spiking up here, or just the white line here, is what's known as the equity put call ratio. And it's just been very subdued over the last, once we started to basically selling off, we haven't really seen a major shift in a lot more. Again, it's not just put volume, which I see people posting all over the place, which is kind of ridiculous because puts have traded, there's options that have traded a lot more in the last couple of years because of 0-day options. But anyway, I don't want to get off track with that. But what I try to look for is when there's a lot more puts trading than calls. So we finally have that in equities. And again, this doesn't include ETFs, so it's just equities. And we started to see a lot more puts being traded in stocks, not ETFs. And that ratio has jumped to 0.94. Now, you may say like, okay, well, this is getting someplace. You could look to see other spikes. I'm not sure that we need to see something like, this extreme, but I think finally we are starting to see something. And you can, why I put this yellow line in here is so that you could see when we've had similar spikes, what has happened with the S&P. And again, it's really like out of the context of where we've been. I don't think you don't need to necessarily compare like how high the spike is to the other spikes. It's just once you're getting something that's a noticeable change. And you could see the beginning of January, we had one. What did the S&P do? Right? It rebounded there, right? And you could see some of these similar spikes too. This was kind of very noisy that happened in here where we got just a lot of them. But I think it's a change in what we've been seeing finally something has changed in terms of the last couple weeks.
I mean, usually, the buyers of options are often on the wrong side. So when you start to see, people really getting nervous and let's put on hedges now, it's usually like, to your point, getting to a time where maybe we're due for a bounce. When the masses are starting to like bail and the masses are coming in here and saying, hey, this is over, that's usually when the bull starts to actually grab the market back. It's when, the final sellers are starting to get out and we've got the final flushes happening. Have we seen capitulation? People love the term. Guy Adami uses it a lot on CNBC. It's a relative term. I mean, we have not had any one day that stands out more than the other. We've had some vicious sell-offs, yesterday included, but we've had a lot of 100-point sell-offs in the S&P and, snapback rallies of over 100 too. There has been that one standout day that says, whoa, like DeepSeek day, like this is overdone. Stocks down 10, 12% one day. This is overdone. We haven't really had that yet. I don't know if we necessarily need that to bottom. A lot of technicians believe we absolutely need that. I don't know if that's the case. I think it's just headline driven. What we really need, which is what I said yesterday, is, Trump to just not go full on rampage mode here with the tariffs. We need him to just calm down with bull in the China shop mentality, because the market doesn't know what to do with it. The market isn't used to somebody coming in and just ripping apart, firing a bunch of government jobs, fighting with every single country, taking over Greenland and taking over Panama Canal, potentially taking over Canada. I mean, the market doesn't know what to do with this. He needs to take a breather. I'll say it again, calm down, go golfing for a couple of weeks. The market would have a relief rally if he just stopped with new, ideas of like U.S. domination. He needs to slow down a little bit. Not saying what he's doing is right or wrong. Obviously, I don't want to become the 51st state either here. Just saying, I'm not trying to take it to political conversations, but the market has sold off. This has been all on Trump. The entire sell-off has pretty much been on Trump. It was the catalyst to start, and obviously he needs to calm down, and then the market can get some footing and start to rally.
Well, it brings up the question too, like who's going to blink first? Obviously, like I think it was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal this morning, correction in market. And the stance by the administration has been, you've got to focus long term. This is a temporary issue. And so, who will blink first? Is it going to be the administration to say, like, let's pump the brakes on the rhetoric? Or looking ahead to next week, we've got this guy, Jay Powell, who's up to the plate. And, we did see inflation data that cooled. Now, that's not the CPI, and the PPI is not the preferred gauge of inflation for the Fed. That's the PCE. We used to be called the PCE deflator. Now it's called the PCE price index. But absent that data, which we will get at the end of the month, will Powell come on and start to say, hey, we're starting to see inflation really turn? I mean, he'll probably go over some of the internal gauges that he looks at, but will he blink and say, hey, we're ready to start on the path of cutting interest rates again? So one or two of those things I think really could get the market to turn. But if he comes out on Wednesday and doesn't really change his address, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to get a sustained bounce, but I think if he's ready to kind of change his tune as well and be a bit more dovish, I think that would be very good for markets.
Yeah, that would be productive too. Remember next week too, the stocks that have been rallying the most have been, the AI names have been bouncing back. NVIDIA really didn't sell off yesterday, not much at all when we had the whoosh, and then it's the first one to rally today. NVIDIA relative strength is fantastic right now. Might be because they have an event next week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I believe, NVIDIA events. So keep that in mind as we go into the weekend. People start to get excited, start thinking about AI again, start thinking about something other than a trade war. So you can see where the relative strength is coming from. And certain stocks, certain tech stocks are not participating, but NVIDIA has definitely been a source of strength for this market.
Dennis, that just real quick, that is the event starting like Tuesday next week. Does that sound right, Dennis?
Do you have it?
I'm looking right now. It looks like there's like a couple, but it looks like there's an AI conference. It looks like there's a GTC Tuesday to Friday.
GPU Technology Conference in San Jose starts March 17th through the 25th. Or 21st. So it's all next week. Cool. It does start Monday. The times of the start, the key. So Jensen Huang is actually speaking on Tuesday. So Jensen Huang speaks Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So that would be 1 p.m. So mark that on your calendars. Jensen Huang speaking Tuesday, March 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So, and that event starts obviously on Monday, but the big day is going to be Tuesday when Jensen Huang is speaking.
Sure.
And so what? It's kind of interesting with these events for NVIDIA. Both I think the last couple events, including earnings. And by the way, I see quantum stocks moving. We're gonna cover those too, because quantum has a big day too next week. I think it's the 20th, where there's a so-called quantum day. But it's interesting, these events that once you kind of know when those NVIDIA events are on the calendar, and it's great for Dennis to bring this up, because it has been more of a like buy the rumor, sell the news. The last couple events that NVIDIA has rose into a bit, and then on the event day, NVIDIA tries to go higher and then gets smacked down. We saw that both on the last earnings report, and then the last big like shareholder event too, where Jensen, had the leather jacket on, talked about all the new features, and the stock tried to rally, and really, I'll have this right. So that was this day, right in here, where the stock tried to break out and got a massive rejection. Same thing here. So enlarge this so that you can actually see this. And then on the earnings day, it was the same type of red candle. So I would be very cognizant about the actual event day. That's one of the relationships that is in trading like no other. Buy the rumor and sell the news. I'm not sure if we're going to get that same reaction of another lower high, but I would be worried about that.
So lots on the docket, obviously, for next week. Other earnings is going to be Micron, Nike. We can go into those too, but maybe we should do a few of the earnings that reported last night here, Brentster, because we've got a couple pops in some of the earnings stocks from last night.
You want to start? Should we just start with QBTS, which had earnings, since we were talking the quantum a little bit?
Yeah, if you want to go into quantum, we can talk those for sure.
Yeah, let's check out QBTS.
We haven't talked quantum names in a while, so it's interesting here.
Right.
QBTS, I've got it here, Brentster, if you don't have it. They
go
did
for
report last. No, actually, that was yesterday. Sorry, QBTS was yesterday morning. So that wasn't actually the last night. That was yesterday morning, which is why
I think there was Needham reiterates buy on D-Wave Quantum, maintains 850 price target. I'm not sure that's why the name's moving that much, but there's a lot of movement in some of these quantum names, and if anybody has any others, I'm looking at the chat to see if anybody knows the thing, or if it's just there's a lot of growth names that are up this morning too.
So, I think so, and these have been really beaten up. Like look at QBTS from where it was. Obviously, it had the rally and then sold back off, and then let's just look at our RGTI, which is another one. The ridiculous rally from $2 to $20, then the sell-off, which we played a little bit of that bounce there. It's come all the way back down again too. So people kind of fishing around, looking at these names. Maybe the story can get hot again here. I would say if we go back to QBTS, $8 looks like a major level for me. That's where we topped out in February. So if you look at that 821 high, I'd probably lighten up if you get anywhere near $8.
Let's go to one that did report last night. Sorry about that, folks. DocuSign company shares trading up about 10% here this morning. Looks like they had beat on the top line and the bottom line. Guidance looked a little weaker than expected, expecting Q1 sales 745 million to 749 million. Analysts are up at about 756. Also, the fiscal year 25 sales guidance was a little bit lighter than expected. Despite that, shares are trading higher here this morning.
Big pop helps that the market is strong here this morning for holding on. I mean, we can say, oh, it reported into a weak tape, but the tape got strong right after 4 o'clock. We started bouncing on the overall market. So you kind of got to analyze not the intraday tape, but what's actually happening after hours. And I mean, it's continued to build here too. So far, so good. Again, bad news is this overhead supply. A lot of people are really beat up on this. They might come in and say, hey, I want to lighten up.
Oh, it's amazing too that the stock sold off into the report. So
Yeah.
you look at the percentage gain, you're like, wow, the stock is really moving. And then I've got the 1 hour chart of DocuSign up, and okay, we're a little bit higher than the range for the week. So that will be interesting to see if it can get out of the range. But I'll tell you, some of these moves that you see, like up this much pre-market percentage change. What is the percentage change right now? Percentage change, I think it's indicated up. You think up 11%. Oh my goodness, and it gets you right back because the stock sold off right into the report. So,
basically getting yesterday's losses back.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough market. It's been a tough market here. And then the other one that we had on our list just to talk about here was RBRK, another growth name that has really been beat up. Sold off a bit into the report. Is getting a huge bounce here today, up 17%. I'm going to say it again. We're just not in Kansas anymore here. There's people who are underwater in this thing. There's people who own Rubrik that own a lot of other growthy names too. And when you get a pop like this on a stock, they're probably like saying, hey, I'm getting some money back here. Maybe I lighten up into this pop. I think near 70, you find major resistance on Rubrik. I don't know where it got to last night. 65, so you may have room to 68, 69, 70, but I'd be a seller into the strength. We're still not in Kansas anymore, where gap and goes are plentiful. There's a lot of gaps and no's, you could say, or gaps and give her back.
At least this one was a beat on the figures, and then the guidance looks strong here. Just to run the numbers, Q1 adjusted loss 33 to 31 cents. Analysts down at about a 40-cent loss. Sales also look pretty strong. They're expecting 259 million to 261 million. Analysts were down around 243 million for Rubrik.
Yes, and the analysts are embracing it this morning. Wedbush analysts maintain an outperform rating and raise their price target on the stock to $80 from $75 following Rubrik's great quarter. The new price target reflects a higher multiple and increased confidence in the Rubrik growth story. Noted that the earnings report featured massive beat across the board. So it does feel like it is a growth morning. I think this will be an interesting one. This will be one that I will keep an eye on to see how this progresses, because again, we are in a tough environment. If it was where we were a couple months ago, I would say, hey, let's watch to see if this thing has legs. But it's a tough environment for growth stocks right now to continue.
Not a lot has legs. That's the biggest problem here.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, market had lots of legs in 2024. It's got legs here, but they're all down in this market here. So, I mean, we just got to, it's right now macro first, micro second, meaning you're looking at the macro landscape first to try to come up with your trading ideas. It's a big snapback rally. That's what it is. It's on good news. Like I said, obviously, the budget and the, good talks with Canada and the US. That's great news. That's all great news. Can we build on it? It's going to depend on the next headline. This market is the most headline-driven market that I've ever traded in my 25-year professional career. And that's saying a lot because we've been through a lot of headline-driven markets, financial crisis, but I don't remember ever being this glued to one person who is controlling the entire narrative of the market on a continuous basis. And obviously that's Donald Trump and what's going to be said next.
And then just a quick heads up, there is a quad witch next week at the end of next week. So just something else kind of like, non-specific to get on your radar. And of course we have our big Fed meeting on Wednesday and then Tuesday and Wednesday actually. And we're going to hear what happens on Wednesday. And then I imagine Jay Powell is doing a presser on Wednesday after they give that rate decision. Do you guys know off the top of your head?
Yeah, he usually does. So I would assume it's usually 30 minutes to an hour, usually 30 minutes after the release. So I'd expect him to start talking around 2:30.
And then if we want to go into just a couple other earnings reports that we got on, you were mentioning a couple earnings reports next week that you hit on your radar, Dennis, if you want to mention a couple of those.
Yeah. So next week, the big ones are going to be Micron on Thursday, Nike on Thursday, Williams Sonoma's on Wednesday. Just cherry picking the ones that I wrote down
Yeah.
here. We got Home Builder Lennar on Thursday's a big day. Thursday's got Micron, Nike, FedEx, Lennar. It's got Jabil Circuits, Accenture. Thursday's a pretty big day.
Nice.
Pinduo Duo, I believe, is on Wednesday. Sometimes those China names aren't confirmed though, so you might want to verify that. But yeah,
Sure.
Thursday's going to be a big day, and maybe we start with Micron here. So I've sold my Micron into the bounce, bought it again. It has just been working this 90, 80, 87 to 90 area, and then bouncing back up. I was thinking about trying to hold for 100. I wish I would have, but I didn't. It's moving up here now. Stock is trading up on an upgrade, I believe, here this morning. But one thing to say is some of the chips really had a decent day yesterday. Not only Nvidia, but you had stocks like Applied Materials, which weren't going down. And it's been really beat up. Stocks like Lam Research really didn't go down much. It's been really beat up. AMD didn't go down that much. Some of these things just are experiencing full-on seller exhaustion here now. So I think we've got to just analyze it from where is the leadership looking like it wants to lead? And I think the chips are starting to look better than really anything else right now.
That's a great observation. That stood out to me too yesterday. Of course, we had another late end of day selling into the close, which stunk in my opinion. But yeah, the semis are trying to. Feels like they're trying to bottom a little bit. In terms of the tech sector, which has been overall very beaten up. I've got some support here at 213. Basically let's just call it 213. I've got some major support there, and we're holding that for now. And basically I've talked about with the 5-period moving average and the indices, but you've actually got the semis ETF that's been able to get over the 5-period moving average and should be extending a little bit from that. So some positives. I mentioned I went long some Broadcom, which is also trying to kind of move out of the base. I like the chart that you brought up in Micron. It's actually doing very well here on a relative basis for the semis, and moving higher. Perhaps it's also a cheap stock too, right?
Very cyclical. So I've been caught in Micron before thinking, oh, it's trading 6 times earnings, and then the cycle goes down, they start losing money. So that's the one thing you have to consider with Micron. It's really hard to look at on a valuation perspective. Obviously very dependent on DRAM prices. Forward PE is only 13 at current levels here. That's estimates. But it's such a cyclical business that it's very hard to predict a year away earnings. You can usually get the quarter pretty good, but it's very hard to predict further out than that. So always be careful on the cyclicality of Micron's earnings.
Why don't we jump over to another name on Thursday of next week? I believe it'll be before the open. Do you know, Dennis? Nike?
Thursday, yes. I don't know if it's before or after, but Nike has been a stock that's been really beat up too. A stock that's just been absolutely hated. Obviously, we get change of leadership. Stock gets a little bit of a pop, and then recently has just been getting beat up here again. I don't know. Again, you look at this, ONON eating the lunch, other companies coming in. Is Nike the brand to be anymore? I don't know if it's the case, and that's what makes me struggle, with Nike, because, you can look at a valuation and say, oh, heck, Nike's, it's trading 22 times earnings, but it was trading 22 times earnings with $100 and some. The earnings have come down. So I'd say guilty until proven innocent, but I do see a lot of support in the 71 area.
Christian, any thoughts on Nike here?
I think it will be good to kind of hear about what the CEO says about the current environment. We've seen retail really get smoked. There's been a lot of names, especially I think travel names got absolutely hammered yesterday on the R word, the recession fears. So I don't know in terms of what's going to happen here with Nike, because it has been an underperformer in the group. It's been
Mhm.
holding in here. Like it's been the base over here has been holding. It hasn't been really didn't go too far on the upside. It's been making lower highs. So it hasn't broken the range. So they're really going to need to say something, different, positive, or maybe even all not that negative, in terms of like what they're seeing from the consumer. So that's what I would be looking for. I think it's beat enough if they say something, a little bit positive, you might get a bounce in the stock considering where it is.
Let's do one more. Let's see if we can get a little more interest. It seems like, the chat wasn't super excited about Nike there. Let's do one more, and then we'll get ready for our guest, Tony Pawlak, over at Real Life Trading. Let's take a look at FedEx here, also on on Thursday next week, and that one is going to be pre-market. Dennis, thoughts on FedEx heading into the support next week?
Man, UPS and FedEx stories have just not been good. And we know it's Amazon, just does their own things now. They're basically doing no business with FedEx and UPS anymore. And it's showing up in the stock prices here. I mean, UPS has been an epic disaster. We're talking about giving back 5 years of gains back to 2020 pricing here. Dividend is 5.65%, so I understand the value investors that are liking it. Valuation has still been decent here. I don't know where drone delivery in the future and all this other stuff fits in here. So I think this industry is just a bit under attack right now. It starts obviously from Amazon, but it's hard to just say, hey, this is a super growth industry here. I mean, I think it's at like peak earnings, this industry, the physical driving delivery. Like just imagine, and I'm just going to say, hypothetically speaking, that, Tesla turns it around. And obviously, I've not liked Tesla stock for a while here because of the Musk politics, just hurting the brand. But I could envision a market where maybe if he does figure out full self-drive and robotaxi and gets the humanoids going, the Tesla gets into the delivery business. They have the semis already. So they're building the semi plants, getting built. So, I mean, just imagine a couple humanoids driving the thing. That would be very disruptive to this too. So I have trouble investing in UPS or FedEx because I think there's a lot of disruptive businesses coming at them in the near future. So, is it this year? No. Is it next year? Probably not. Is it 2027? Maybe. So, but this market likes to look ahead too. So I think, these are value traps. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on the FedEx, but I will be listening to what the same thing with what the CEO says. What are they seeing from the economy? These are very cyclical type of names, and I want to hear what they're saying about, like, are they seeing softness in the economy? What are they seeing in terms of overall volumes? Yep. I think that'll be the most interesting. And you could really, like, listening to the CEOs can help you formulate an opinion, even if you don't trade FedEx and UPS. Like, I don't trade those names, but but it could help you kind of formulate a plan of, like, oh geez, is the consumer doing really, really poor? That kind of takes me takes me out of that group if I hear that, and on the long side. So, the commentary will be really interesting. Tesla, by the way, since we've got the Tesla chart up, I'm looking at 257.70. I would like to see Tesla get above that level. And then I can kind of I want to get back involved in Tesla, but I got to see the technicals cooperate. The technicals are always a thing that's going to try to confirm for me my thought process. So I want to get involved in Tesla, but I'm going to wait till it gets over 257.70. I'd rather be a little bit late and correct than wrong, and than early and wrong.
I mean, a lot of people, I get this question every day because obviously I was a huge Tesla bull in 2024. And they're like, when are you rebuying, Denny? Or when are you rebuying? When are you rebuying? And I think it just comes down to, I just don't have, I don't have examples from the past where CEOs have been actively so one-sided and killing off, half of their customer base. I don't have, examples where they're going in and attacking the stores and protesting against them. I don't know. So when I don't know, I'm just going to stay on the sidelines. I do love the long-term prospects of Tesla. I love the thoughts of humanoids and self-driving cars. I think they're, could be the #1 company for physical AI. But if everybody stays ticked off at Elon Musk because of, his political views, and not everybody, I know the Republicans, a lot of Republicans that really love what he's saying here, and but internationally here, it's been a disaster for Tesla here. The sales numbers keep coming in, more numbers yesterday out of, I forget which European country, but they were down like 50%. I mean, they're saying, Tesla bulls are arguing that this is the site, the refresh, and on the new models that are coming out, people are waiting, and there's some of that for sure. Like Gary Black's been arguing that's everything. I don't think it's all of it though. I think a lot of it is politics here. So I think he's got to figure out, what he wants to do. Does he want to be, involved in the government here, or does he want to actually be a business owner and get back to running his businesses? That's where I'm at. So a lot of unknowns with Tesla, and that's why I'm kind of staying on the sidelines for now. I still have a little legacy position left over from it. I sold, I think it was 95% of my position, but I kept a few shares just for fun in one of the longer term accounts. Not been fun. I wish I would have sold it all. But it was really good for me. I mean, Tesla was one of my best stocks of the year last year, if not the best.
But don't, from a contrarian standpoint, right? There's an old term in Wall Street saying you want to be buying when there's blood in the streets. Yeah. At this point, blood. I think, what's that?
There's blood.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of stuff going on. You hear about protests and all this stuff. So it
get worse.
It has reached a fever pitch of that type of rhetoric. So we do have a guest coming up.
Yeah, we do have.
Bring him on the Tesla conversation, because Tony's going to be looking at the technicals here.
Here we go. Tony Pawlak, owner of Real Life Trading, always with some nice words of wisdom, always optimistic. How's your morning? How's your week going so far, Tony?
Week's going good. It's been fun navigating these markets a little bit here and helping people through. This is the first kind of semi-crash people have been in a lot of RLTs. So just been hey, it's all right. This is how you can make money to the downside and just having fun. So it's been a good week, honestly.
Look at
the
optimism. Look at the optimism. Yeah. Markets in turmoil and Tony's having fun here with this gang. Love it, man.
Yeah.
It's reassuring. It's reassuring.
Talk about making money from the short side here. Are you doing it through options, Tony? I know a lot of the stuff you do is through options, or do you actually go out and physically initiate shorts on stocks as well? Talk to me what they're doing over there at Real Life Trading.
Yeah, definitely. Options for me. I've been burned on some shorts years ago, and I was like, you know what? I'll buy some puts. Puts, you have a max loss. So if the stock gets a 20% gap up overnight or something from some news, which can happen, it's happened to me. You're not stuck in short shares just getting hammered. You can go you know what? I put $500 on some puts. The worst thing that can happen is I lose $500 or $100 or $10,000. Whatever the size you put on it, you're good. So it can fall all the way down and you get the leverage to the upside if you do it right, but you don't have the leverage to the downside. So I use options a lot. That's what I've been doing is just buying puts. So once the market kind of had a little blow off top, my group and I started buying puts that expired. I'm out of them, by the way. I was kind of hoping I wish I would have stayed in a little bit longer because this actually looks like we could have a little bit more fun here soon, but I figured a bounce would be coming soon. But I think it is.
I think we are. I think we are due for a bounce here. I mean, what technical indicators do you use to try to time for a bounce? I mean, it's so fun having you on here, in a basically bear market for a lot of stocks here. And, like you said, a lot of people, even newer listeners for pre-market prep, have not been through these tougher times. People who have been with us through 2020, obviously, went through the COVID, and that was just an insane crash. I mean, we can say this has been very mild compared to 2020. But talk about, strategies for trying to time, a turn in the markets, or do you try to time a turn in the markets?
I do try to time it. I feel like the combination of sentiment and price action help me to time things up. So I am okay to give up bottoms to get in very low. And I'm okay to get out, give up the very tippity tops to still get in pretty high when it comes to shorting. So the markets are going to give me some clues. And what I look for are commitments from the bulls. So I want to see certain commitments from the bulls coming in. And then once those commitments get taken out, that's a really strong sentiment play. So if I can start marking out sentiment levels on my chart, it gives me an idea and a location of where things could start to shift. And so I like using the 2-hour time frame for that. And then I kind of mix that in with the daily. And that gives me a really good indicator where it's at. And if I'm wrong, I lose small. If I'm right, it's got a lot of upside. So 2 weeks before it crashed, I started loading into puts, and then I got stopped out of some of those puts. So I lost some money for the couple weeks. And then once it gave me my next little sentiment read, I jumped back in and then made tons. And so that's trading in a nutshell. People are like, you never lose. Like, no, I lose all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Like we talked about last time, right? We're losing small. So that was my experience, right? For a couple weeks leading up to the drop, I was buying puts and then getting squeezed out of some. I stayed in some, but I was getting squeezed out of others. And then saw it again, jumped back in. I think most people, once they lost on 2 trades in a row, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then that's the one that actually works. So staying in the game.
Isn't that the way? Sometimes that is the way here.
So that's what I use to time it up, is just some technicals timed in with sentiment. I really love seeing where the bulls step in and where I know the bulls have to start to defend, and I just pick out those levels.
Tony, I'm not sure if you can share your screen or not there, but they want to do a little bit of ticker time with Tony Pawlak here. They want to throw Tesla at you. So if you can just figure out how you screen share, if you're willing to share your screen,
of course,
that'd be great.
Of course.
Tony's going to get the screen shared here, and we're going to go, and they want to start with Tesla. I mean, there's a lot of people been talking about Tesla for a long time. It's been one of the most volatile trading vehicles here in the last year. Obviously, it's went from, bliss to, basically, I won't say the nasty word, but you can just see it on that chart. It's given back the entire, huge run that it had in basically the last quarter of 2024, just like that. So thoughts here, Tesla?
Yeah, can you guys see my Tesla screen?
We do.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. All right, good. Make sure I'm not sharing some. I've got 3 others, so make
bad stuff.
Looking at my email, that'd be fun. There's nothing fun there, but hey, we could go through it. So in my opinion, Tesla is at its first buying area. So the real question is, are the bulls going to step in? So far, they're trying to. I'll see how today closes, but earlier in the week, I wasn't super happy with it. Can you guys see my pin, by the way? No?
Move it around a little, Tony.
I don't think so.
No, dang it. Okay.
That's okay. Yeah, we do. We can, yeah.
I see a little crosshair.
We see
a little crosshair, okay.
Yep.
So 265 was my first spot of like, hey, bulls should be very, very excited here. And they weren't. So my next spot really is like, 216. We finally had some bull step in there, but this is my early warning sign of like, okay, bulls aren't crazy excited to buy this dip, because really I thought 265 or so would have been it, especially after all these down candles in a row. It's extended. It needs some relief rally, and I think we will get it. But this is my first warning sign that, hey, the dip might take some more time than we think. And if this level starts to break, I'm looking at like 160 down on Tesla, 170 area. So we're going to need to see some bulls here soon. That's my perspective. Now, I did leg into some longer term December call options here just to put my toes in the water. It's a lot cheaper than buying shares. So that's a good tip for you guys if you want, once you understand a little bit on options. Instead of buying $100,000 worth of shares here, you can buy a couple contracts of call options, and those call options are going to cost a couple $1,000 instead of 100,000. And so if this whole thing falls apart, I'm out $3,000 instead of having 100,000 of risk on the table, or whatever those numbers could be, right? So whenever I'm tiptoeing in, I'll buy longer term options, and if it takes off, then great. I just call my broker and exercise those options if I want to own the shares at my strike. So I play that game a lot, and that's what I did here at this first support, because I'm like, if the bulls are going to be here, we're partying. And last week we kind of held that level. I was like, let's do it. So Friday we bought, and then it immediately gapped down and started to sink. And so my rule of thumb is, again, it's like, hey, I'm okay with the risk that I've got on. At least I don't have a couple $100,000 of shares on the table, and I can have, some more buying power to leg into lower if we want. But this first buying area should have been the strength, and it wasn't. So second one was, I think we can start working our way back up. 300, I think, is going to be a pretty strong level. If the Bears want to come back into play and roll this back over, 300 will be where it's at. So that's kind of where I'm holding out for, to see what happens. But hopefully this ended up being a nice hammer this week, and bulls start to step in really hard and show some strength. But so far, it's kind of 50-50 for me if they want to bounce this or not.
Hey, Tony, quick question for you on options. And so on this particular one, you're going out, you're giving yourself time. The VIX has gone from 2950 down to down to we're now just a touch under 24 this morning. Are you basically are you staying away from some of the shorter term options because the VIX is still in backwardation, so the front month is bid up, and if there is going to be some vol crush, it's going to be most likely on the front end. So if you go further out, I like your point because the options are a little bit cheaper. Do you find it very difficult to trade options in a heightened volatility environment? Because if you are going to go on the long side, you're going to have to deal with, and the market does bounce, you're also going to have to deal with a bit of vol crush.
Correct. Yeah, you've got to give yourself some time. You can offset volatility with time usually. It's still going to be affected, of course, but it's not as bad, like you said, as within the first 2 weeks to 30 days out. You're going to get crushed pretty hard. So going out further in time, like even, some of the calls that I've bought here on SPY on this dip, they're, end of May. And even then it's still paying a little bit more of a premium than I normally would, but it's drastically less than what I'd be paying if I were to buy these 30 days out or so. So that helps a ton. Yeah. Give yourself more time. And don't make the mistake of going too far out of the money with your option as well. Get a little bit closer to the money. You can still balance it out and get yourself some leverage out there by playing around with some delta. But if you go too far out, those can also get crushed pretty hard as well when it comes to volatility crush. After this drop is right, bringing in volatility in the markets. It's going to drop once the fear goes down, the pricing goes down on options. That's kind of what we're talking about. So
will you use spreads at all, or will you just basically just go outright the option?
I'm sorry, what was the
will you use spreads like a call spread or put spread, or will you basically just stay with the going out a little bit further and sticking with just a call or a put?
Yeah, spreads are great. So if I can't get the reduction in volatility going out in time, then I'm going to put like a debit spread on. So that way there's some option paying me something. I could also sell some puts if I'm okay to own and use some of that money to help reduce the implied volatility premium that I'm paying on my bot option. So there's a few different ways that I can go about doing it. But a debit spread is good. I normally will leg into the debit spread because if this immediately bounces, then I'm better off not having a short leg against it, even if I am paying a little bit more on the premium. And then I can leg into that sold call against it, so to say, once we've gone up a little bit higher, just to give myself some better numbers and better premium.
But let's keep the ticker time going here. Let's do Robinhood.
Yeah. Let's see. What's the ticker here on Robinhood?
HOOD at Robinhood.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right. So on this one, my chart's already on a weekly. So let's jump on this. Again, look at what the bulls should be doing. Bulls should be all over $45. And they tried for 1 week here. It was a great candle. Pulled right into this strong support and rampage, and then immediately got taken out. So looking for these early warning signs, again, this is a sentiment play right here. You know where the bulls are going to be excited to buy. They come in and they buy this thing up, and then it gaps up like, let's go. All the bulls jumping up here, and then it crashes back down. So I'll use this little pin on here. I have another pin I draw on my charts with, but it doesn't work on this. So this is what I'm talking about right up here. Right? These levels, all these bulls got in there, and then it immediately crashed back down. So now we're at the second buying spot, but look what happened at the original buying spot, right? Weakness. So that tells me there's probably a lot more still to go down onto this. And I would say the next spot where bulls are super excited would be like 27, this support out here on a weekly chart. So I've already got more of a bear lean on this because the bulls didn't do what they should have done here. This is a fantastic breakout. But in my opinion, this doesn't really show me the strength. The strength is what happens when it comes time for the bulls to step back in after the dip. And so you'll notice a lot of stocks will run, but where the bulls should buy it up, they fail. And this is where I'm seeing my strength. I'm letting this big move tell me which direction to lean. And I'm letting what happens at the buy the dip tell me how strong this move could potentially be. And so far, it's not great. So working our way down into like a daily time frame. Oh, sorry. I think that this could be running back up into that buying spot. So remember, where should have been a support is now going to be resistance. So if Robinhood jumps up to like 43, 45, it's probably going to get beat back down and continue lower down into the next buying spot around like 30 to 25 areas. That's what I've got. I could be proven wrong, right? If the bulls want to reclaim 45, then great. Dips should get bought up again. But for right now, lean bearish is what I would be doing.
So too deep of a pullback. It's just indicating that there's not enough love for this stock from the institutions. Seems like they've kind of abandoned it. Are there any names so with this market dip that we've seen? Are you, number one, are you starting to get aggressive, or are you still kind of on the sidelines? And number two, what names are like, jumping out at you that you're like, hey, I'm excited for this pullback. I want to get involved.
Yeah. There's a few names. Tesla was the one that I was really excited about for a pullback. But again, it's starting to show its hand now, where I'm talking about where the bulls should be excited to step in. You should have bulls just, licking their lips like this is the greatest buying, and then nothing happened. And so it's like,
right.
All right. So I was excited, and it might not be playing out quite as well as I want to. But there are a few others that I'm looking at real quick, just to answer that first question on this guy. If we were to zoom out here to SPY, get some of this stuff off the chart here real fast, clean up these. I got all these alerts here that I'm looking at levels on. So the markets are always going to be moving in an S curve, right? If we're looking at some technicals, turn this guy back on, we're always going to be making an S curve like this, right? So we've made an S curve here, and it's gone straight vertical. So this is not a shocker at all that we're getting some selling. Why? Sorry, I'm not used to this little pen thing. Because it needs to put in another S curve most likely. So for me, I think this drop is just getting started. I think that we probably will start getting some retests back up to like 575 on SPY over the next week or two. It could run all the way up to 600. But really, I think we're getting ready to see some huge selling. So probably something like this where it rotates back down. And the first buying spot for me is like 480 to 500 or so on SPY.
Well, this sounds awful.
This could be. So again, I don't know if it'll do it. But the monthly chart right now it's telling me, hey, this thing's got room to go lower. I mean, we went 2 years.
Monthly candle in a long time.
Yeah, this is a backbreaker for sure. The 10 EMA here that's been holding for a long time, it's getting smoked, and the bulls aren't even trying to bounce. Which again, I do think we're going to get a pretty good relief rally next week. Within the next 2 weeks, I'm planning on the bulls stepping back in. But again, it's understanding your sentiment, because if you're trying to go long and this thing comes up to that 575 mark, you've got to understand like that is the spot for the bears to step in. So protect yourself there, because it's possible that we just keep running, right? It's possible that this just bounces up out of here and we keep on going for sure. But realize the sentiment levels here, 580 to 575, it's huge. Structure has been broken on a weekly chart. We're full double top on a weekly. The neckline is going to be a big deal on that. So if I jump into a weekly, this is what I'm talking about. This double top is insane. So we've gotten the follow through, retest back up into this area. It's looking bearish. Make money on this, because if it does drop, this trade right here could make your year. Like this comes around once every 3 to 5 years. Maybe it might even be longer. This good of a trade setup. I mean, you could be looking to. My plan is to double my trading account on this one trade right here, and I don't have to put that much risk on. Most people hear that and like, okay, let's go put my whole account on this. Like, no. I'll probably put 5 to 7% of my account on puts, and I'm going to do it smart, correctly. And that 5 to 7% is going to 1,000x down around 480.
It's a great point that we could have a heck of a rally. And if you go back to that, the first screen that you had, I think that's a monthly chart, but it could just be like an inside candle, because we've moved so far. That's such a big red candle that if you have an inside, candle from there, which could be a heck of a bounce, but the trend is still, we're still leaning down. So I think that's a great point that you bring up, Tony.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, to me, this is completely. And by the way, like everyone's going to think this is a crash in the end of the world, and this is just a normal stock pulling back. Like we see this on a 15-minute every single day, right? You see this on a 5-minute every single day. If I could find some bull moves here, right? You see a stock that runs bullish, and then what happens? It drops right back down. Where's my little thing? It runs up, comes back down, and then goes higher. The stock is going to do this on every single time frame, including the monthly chart, right? So including the monthly chart here, where did it go? There we go. I don't know why it went back so far. It's the exact same game that it's playing here. Run up, come back down, and get bought back up. So I'm a full buy the dip. This is not the end of the world. It's just going to seem that way to people when the markets are down 20 or 30%. So I'm buying it. The charts are telling me this is extremely bullish. It's just when you go straight vertical, it's the same thing that happened back in 2020. We run, and then we get this 2022, and everyone's like, "What's going on?" It's like, well, your markets you're doing this, right? So if you're in the part one right here, you're gonna get this part two and then a bounce. So it did it here. Now it's gonna rinse and repeat and play the same game. So I think we have lower to go. I don't know. By the way, this market doesn't have to do any of this. You have to be able to see what it's doing, right? It might only pull back to 520 and then rampage. You've got to be able to look at the charts and understand when momentum is starting to shift. But my levels are like 480 to 420 I'm still buying. So just be aware of that. It's not a guarantee it's going there. If you can make sure and read momentum when it's starting to shift, it's going to help you out quite a bit.
Tony Pawlak, owner at Real Life Trading. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for doing a few tickers. Appreciate that, sir. Hope you have a good weekend.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime,
Thanks,
always.
Yep.
Later.
That's great
Dennis?
perspective. That's a great view to kind of think about. You know, he's looking at a monthly chart. He's looking at scenarios that could play out for a couple of weeks, and then also understanding the bigger trend. So I love that view, and I love thinking it out like that. Yeah.
I didn't like it when he was saying we could fall 30%, though.
Not particularly, but you got to run your good scenario analysis.
My long-term portfolio, if we start falling 30% here, so we'll see.
At least he
lots
woke you
of
up,
notes
Dennis.
here. Anything can happen.
Dennis, I wanted to ask something that we didn't really talk about a ton this week. Do we have any imbalances here?
Yeah, they're small today, and I think institutions are tepid, for lack of a better word, of showing their hand too early.
Sure.
So we've seen, some of these huge imbalances coming early. They do obviously grow as you get closer to the open, still 33 minutes away. We don't get NASDAQ imbalances till 9:25. Right now, there's a lot of little sell imbalances here, so nobody really getting all excited and jumping in. I do see a Berkshire Hathaway with a buy imbalance, and I'd be looking actually on Burke if it opens too high to fade it, because Burke has been moving opposite to the overall market. I make money by identifying, those little relationship-based trades as well. And look at the day Burke had yesterday. Burke.B flying high because they have all that cash and it's seen as defensive and the market's getting killed. Today, Burke's up again. Well, the market's up again. So that doesn't add up to me. So if they want to buy Burke quite a bit higher here this morning, I'm not saying I'm shorting a pre-market, but maybe on the open, if this thing opens 507, 508, 509, I'll probably try from the short side.
Couple minutes left here in the show. Wanted to get your guys' thoughts heading into the weekend. Christian, if you feel like going first, anything that you're setting up into the weekend, into this last day of trading for the week?
Yeah, I think you have to honor the pattern. We've seen this play out so many times this week, where you've got a nice, move pre-market. Futures are up. I know, Dennis has been all over this, and I think for now, you got to continue to sell the rip until we have some type of a change. Now we have these little changes with inflation and with it's nice that the government's not going to shut down. Okay, but I mean a real change. With the rhetoric and the tariffs, as well as with the interest rates, and we're going to get that. We're going to get new information on Wednesday, but until then, I would continue to kind of do what Dennis has been recognizing, and what's working in this market is sell these little rips and watch to see. I would want to see a strong day overall. The last 3 or 4 days, it's been once we get these little bounces around 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then the last hour has been horrible. It's been heavy selling pressure. So I want to see what happens at the end of the day, and if it's going to be another case of a swoosh down, it's just more of the same, and you can't get too excited yet.
Dennis, how about you? What are you setting up for the weekend? Any trades that you are going to be putting on ahead of the weekend?
Yeah, it depends on how we close here today, but I'm looking at the NVIDIA event next week. I love the relative strength in NVIDIA here, so I probably will try to be long it into the weekend. depending on, where, but things could change. We go back, from where we are now to where we are at 4 o'clock might be a completely different story. Maybe, some rhetoric's happening, maybe some rumors are happening that I'm nervous about. But other things being equal right now, I'd be looking to buy NVIDIA next week. Maybe even some Micron into next week's earnings. I love our owning stocks ahead of reports. The problem is the macro is driving the bus right now, so that strategy hasn't been working as well as it has in the past.
Good stuff, guys. Good show today. Good show this week. On Monday, quick preview of the guests. We're going to be having Todd Gordon. He is founder and CEO of tradinganalysis.com. Should be about 8:35. Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us this week on Pre-Market Prep. Good luck today. Everyone have a great weekend.